Alright, so I guess we can say that NBA trade season is among us. We saw some minor trades happen during the finals, some draft assets being moved around, but then we saw our first bigger trade of the offseason on Tuesday of the Houston Rockets trading Christian Wood to the Dallas Mavericks for a host of players and a first-round pick. And like I always say, once that first domino in a trade falls, you generally see a lot of other trades following from that. And with the NBA draft now less than a week away, obviously the NBA season just concluded with the Warriors winning it last night. And the NBA draft obviously is a night where there are a lot of transactions that are being made around the league. It got me thinking about potential trades that the Bulls could be making, especially for Coby White after that report that came out from Bleacher Report that the Bulls are actively shopping Coby and their upcoming 18th pick in the draft. And because Coby has really been the most commonly mentioned name when it comes to trade talks for the Bulls, really dating all the way back to last season's trade deadline, meaning the 2021 trade deadline when the Bulls traded for Vucevic. And because I've been saying it for a while now, I have a hard time seeing Coby suiting up in a Bulls uniform to start this upcoming season. I figured let's talk about what some actual trades for Coby White might look like for the Bulls, and that's what we'll be discussing in this video. So what's going on, everyone? You're listening to Bulls Central here. Hope you're all doing well. Now, as I mentioned, Coby White's name being involved in trade rumors for the Chicago Bulls has really been nothing new for the better part of 2 years now for the Bulls, ever since the new front office took over, because as all new regimes do, they generally like to clean house and construct their own roster, which you've seen Acme do in just 2 seasons at the helm by turning over the entire team with only Zach Lavine and Coby White as the remaining players from the Garpax era. Coby was the last draft pick made by the former regime, who selected him with the 7th overall pick in 2019. And every trade deadline and offseason that has come around since the new front office has taken over, there has always been this kind of uncertainty as to whether Coby will be remaining with the Bulls, given AK got rid of everyone else on the roster who was not an all-star anyway, like Zach Lavine. But Coby has still remained with the team. And to be honest, a lot of trade rumors and speculation around his future has really been from the fans and a little bit of the media more than anything. Like, really, those close to the Bulls or Bulls insiders have never really come out and reported anything that the Bulls were looking to move on from Coby White. That is until now, when we got that report from Jake Fisher at Bleacher Report, who is pretty well known and credible in terms of his dealings with the NBA, although Bleacher Report itself maybe isn't the most reliable and accurate platform, but most of what I have seen come from Jake Fisher has usually turned out to be true, with a lot of validity to his reporting. And according to Jake Fisher, based on insider knowledge into the Bulls front office, is that the Bulls have put Coby White on the trading block and have started fielding calls to see what they can get for him in a trade, and they're looking to potentially include that 18th pick after the selection to beefing up that trade package to really get a quality player in return. No idea what potential players the Bulls are going to be looking at to get in return for Coby in the 18th pick, as nothing was specified there in that report, but of course we can speculate into who the Bulls could be considering or should be considering if in fact it is true they are looking to ship both Coby and that 18th pick. Now, I want to be clear, because I can't tell you how many times I have been called a Coby hater on the channel, but I want to be clear that I do not think that Coby White is just some trash player who is never going to amount to anything in the NBA, and that the Bulls should do anything in their power to move him, even if it means just for a second-round pick, which isn't an exaggeration. Like, I've heard some Bulls fans make these types of statements. But then there are, of course, fans on the other end of the spectrum who truly believe Coby White is a future star player, which I cannot get behind at all. I've always said I'm kind of in the middle of the Coby White fan spectrum. I think he's a good player. I think he's a valuable player because of his scoring ability. The fact that he can be a scoring threat and get hot and go off for 20-25 points coming off the bench is a nice asset to have. The problem, though, is that he doesn't do it consistently. The long-standing issue with Coby White is his consistency. For every great game that he has, where you think he's turned a corner, he follows it up with a stretch of bad games. And sure, I get it. He's young, only 22, going into his 4th season in the league. Like, you should expect some inconsistency, some growing pains, and times needed for development. But the fact of the matter is, I don't see the ceiling of Coby White really being all that high. I think he still has some potential to grow and improve a bit. But outside of being a scoring spark off the bench in a 6-man role, I don't see Coby turning into an all-star caliber level player in this league. And because the Bulls already have a full backcourt with presumably Zach Lavine if he resigns with the Bulls, Lonzo Ball, Alex Caruso, and Dosunmu, who in my view has already shown more poise and potential to be a better all-around player than Coby because of Io's two-way abilities, Coby is kind of the odd man out for the Bulls. Really, you're needing to choose between Ayo and Coby, because Coby is going to be wanting to get paid next offseason when his rookie contract expires. Also, Ayo's 2-year contract will be expiring at the same time next season, and you're not going to have the money to keep both. So it would make more sense to trade one before they can become a free agent so you can get something of value for them in return. And based on the direction of the franchise, the fact that Coby was a pick from the old regime, and the fact that the Bulls need to improve their defense, Coby is that guy that is going to make more sense to trade based on the construction of this roster. Now, I think the bigger question is, well, what is Coby's trade value exactly? Because it's probably not as high as some Bulls fans might think. That being said, though, he is still a young player who can shoot. Outside shooting is paid at a premium in this league. He shot 38.5% from 3 last year. So even despite his inconsistency, he shoots the 3 at a decent clip. So for a team that is looking to get younger, rebuild, and add some scoring on their roster, Coby is a piece that you may look to trade, especially if you already have some veteran players that maybe aren't part of your future. Now, you also throw in that 18th pick, and that package becomes even more valuable because you're adding another younger player with added potential for the future. And here's the other thing. With that trade that the Mavs made for Christian Wood, which really centered around that first round pick, which was the 26th pick, it kind of set the market value for what a first round pick can get you this offseason. Yes, the trade included a lot of other players as well. I'm not saying a first round pick will get you Christian Wood, but first round picks are paid at a premium this league. I don't necessarily agree with it because the NBA draft is always a bit of a crapshoot, and I would much rather trade for an established player for something you know what you're going to get in return rather than a draft pick that could end up being a bust. That's why I always prefer to be on the receiving end of getting a quality player in return than just trading players to acquire picks. But first round picks are seen as very valuable trade assets in the NBA. So you combine the youth and scoring of Coby White, who is still in his rookie deal, with a mid-first rounder that isn't the 26th pick like the Mavs just traded for Christian Wood, an 18th pick, and Coby White, this can actually get you a pretty good value in return. So let's talk about some trades that might actually work. Now, first and foremost, what do the Bulls need to fill out this roster? It's been talked about ad nauseum. They need more front court depth. They need more defense in the front court, specifically rim protection, and they need shooting, which I know sounds kind of counterproductive. Like, why would you trade Coby when he's one of the few shooters that you have on this team? Well, I'm talking about shooting specialists and guys that can do it consistently, that you can rely upon consistently as an outside threat that draw defenses away from DeMar and Zach Lavine. And I actually wanted to start there. And this is probably more of an unrealistic trade proposal out of the bunch, and I'll explain why. But that is the Bulls trading Coby White and Derrick Jones Jr. via a sign and trade, of course, for Duncan Robinson. I did not include the 18th pick in this one because I personally think that is too much for Robinson, especially since it looks like the Heat are maybe trying to find a way out of his massive contract that they gave him. The reason I say this one is a bit unrealistic is because the Heat aren't really looking to get younger per se. They just finished with the best record in the East, nearly making it to the NBA Finals. Coby White doesn't really elevate them all that much. Derrick Jones Jr. is more included to make the money work since Robinson is going to be making near $17 million next year, while Coby is only set to earn $7.4 million in the final year of his rookie contract. So you have to include him in a sign and trade to actually make the salaries work. But even for Derrick Jones Jr., a former Heat player, they could use his wing defense and athleticism off the bench, especially if they're not even going to have Robinson in the rotation like we saw at the end of the season. I still don't think the Heat would go for this because they likely could get more in a return for Duncan Robinson, and they're probably going to look to bring in more veteran savvy players than someone like Coby White. But this would allow them to get Robinson off of the books. Coby would be an expiring deal, so if things don't work out, they don't have to re-sign him. For the Bulls, this is a big upgrade on the shooting front. Robinson really got the contract that he received from the Heat because he's a sharpshooter that can help space the floor. The downside for the Bulls, you're taking on a contract that is set to pay Robinson through 2026, which could become an untradeable contract by the end of it. And Robinson doesn't play a lick of defense. His defense is probably even worse than Coby White. So this would really only solve the Bulls' lack of shooting. It would not improve their defense, nor would it give them size in the front court. But Robinson can play the 3 or the 2. Being that consistent sharpshooter off the bench would be a big come up for the Bulls if their plan is to actually move on from Coby White anyway. Another trade that I actually think could work, but I'm still a little iffy on, is the Bulls trading Coby White, Troy Brown Jr., and the 18th pick for Jeremy Grant. The reason I say I'm iffy on this one is because while Jeremy Grant gives the Bulls a strong, sort of fringe star-level player at the 4, it doesn't solve their defensive issues, and Grant While he adds another scoring threat for the Bulls, he's not the best rebounder for his size, and because he's 28, he's in his prime, you're likely going to impede the development of Patrick Williams. Like, really, if you're going to bring in Jeremy Grant, how much playing time is Patrick going to get realistically? Because now he's likely coming off the bench with Grant starting, and now your starting lineup is even more devoid of defense when you take Pat off of it. A front court of Vooch and Grant sounds nice on the offensive end, but also would be a nightmare on defense. For the Bulls, you're giving up young assets for Grant with the 18th pick and Coby. Trey Brown Jr. is really in there for more salary filler purposes, and that would have to be done via a sign and trade. I do think the Pistons would take this trade because they're in full rebuild mode with their current roster. This gives them essentially 3 young assets to work with for the future, and of course the Bulls get a veteran 4, which they need. But let's talk about some of the trades that could be realistic and ones that I really like, and that's the Bulls trading Coby White in the 18th pick for OG Anunoby. Now, I know you're thinking, why would the Raptors ever do this? OG Anunoby has been a great player for them and has gotten better with every passing season on the Raptors. He's only 24 years old. He can put up 17 points per game on solid efficiency. He can shoot it from deep, and he actually plays solid defense. Why would they give that up for Coby and a first? Well, part of the reason I threw this one in there is because there have been reports that have come out saying the Raptors are potentially looking to trade Anunoby, and OG himself, has expressed some dissatisfaction playing in Toronto. No direct quotes or anything from him, but it's been reported that he's unsure of his future with the Raptors. But the other reason I include this is because it's possible there might be a bit of buyer's remorse on the part of the Raptors after giving him that 4-year, $72 million extension, and while he's been productive when available, that's sort of been the key phrase there, is when he's available. The guy hasn't really been able to stay healthy. The last 2 seasons only playing 43 and 48 games in the past 2 years respectively. And when you pay a guy big money like that and they can't stay on the floor, it definitely calls into question how you approach his future. Now, I know some people will say, well, why would the Bulls want to take on an injury-prone player when you've already had so many challenges with injuries this past season? But honestly, I think that's a risk you take on if in fact OG Anunoby is being made available for a trade. He's 24, sure, the injuries are somewhat concerning, but they don't pose any long-term risk. He continues to improve his game, hasn't even entered his prime yet, and he's another wing that gives you size and two-way ability. To get that in exchange for Coby and a first-round pick, that's a no-brainer in my view. The Raptors likely will want more, though, even if they are having some buyer's remorse on Anunoby because some team will likely overpay him in a trade. They might even look for another pick in that trade, which at that point, I guess you could consider the first-round pick that the Bulls have from Portland, but in my view, I think that might even be a bit too much for OG Anunoby. Another one I like, though, is the Bulls trading Coby and the 18th pick for Jordan Clarkson. Now, the only way this trade would actually happen is if, in fact, the Jazz blow it up and move on from both Mitchell and Gobert, which is not out of the realm of possibility. That is one team that is probably going to make big changes this offseason after failing yet again in the playoffs and the departure of their head coach. But if they blow up the roster and look to reset and completely start rebuilding, you'd have to think Jordan Clarkson would be made available and be on the move. And the Jazz, since they'll be looking for draft capital and younger players in the event of a rebuild, this would be a good haul for someone like Jordan Clarkson, who is now 30 years old. I like this for the Bulls because even though Clarkson is a guard and you're still logjammed in the backcourt, this is still a player that would actually be that go-to sixth man that the Bulls were hoping Coby White would have been. A consistent scorer, shooter, and one that is actually durable. He won the Sixth Man of the Year award just a season ago. He would fit the Bulls' timeline, and he's on a favorable contract relative to his production. So if the Jazz were to blow it up, I actually think this move makes sense for both sides. And then finally, another trade I like is the Bulls trading Coby and the 18th pick for Harrison Barnes and a future second-round pick for the Bulls. Harrison Barnes is a versatile 6'8" veteran who can play the 3 or 4, solid scorer, can shoot it from outside, good at driving to the bucket, can get you 5 to 6 rebounds a game, has championship level experience back from his days with the Warriors. He is 30 years old though, so again, you're giving up youth for a veteran player. For the Kings, it's the Kings. You never really know what the hell they're doing, but they still haven't made the playoffs in like 15 years. They're always looking for pieces to build for the future. You give them a pick and a younger player to build around behind De'Aaron Fox, especially since they traded away Tyrese Halliburton. I actually could see the Kings being interested in this, given Barnes isn't really part of their future. He's on an expiring contract, so to be able to get a first-round pick and a young player, out of them, that's a solid return. And for the Bulls, you're adding win now pieces that help you compete in the immediate term, and you're getting a versatile scorer who adds size to the roster. Of course, there are going to be a host of other options, especially if you consider adding in other players to the package, or even including Portland's first round pick that the Bulls own. I think some good options that could be considered in trading Coby White, whether outright or for some additional pieces, would be a guy like Matisse Thybulle, maybe even Kyle Kuzma, John Collins, depending on how much you would have to give up for him anyway. Like I said, there are a number of different trade scenarios one could come up with, so I would love to hear some of the trades you guys think would make the most sense when trading for Coby in the 18th pick. Let me know in the comments, and as always, guys, be sure to subscribe if you're a Bulls fan, as I do post daily Bulls content. Thanks again for tuning in, guys, and I'll catch you in the next one.